Climate activism. It's one of the most important movements of our time, right? But what if I told you that some of its most visible, most passionate tactics are actually pushing people away? Today, we're going to dive into this really surprising paradox of how trying to help the climate cause can sometimes actually hurt it.
Okay, so first things first, let's get one thing crystal clear. Wanting climate action is not some fringe issue. A huge 89% of people around the globe want their governments to step up and do more. Yep, you heard that right. That's a massive, silent majority, and that's our starting point.
But this is where things get really complicated. You see, when you ask people how those super disruptive protests, like blocking highways or throwing soup at famous paintings, affect their support, the picture just completely flips. Look at this data. For every single person these tactics bring on board, they alienate 3 to 4 others. That is a huge net loss of support. It's wild.
So this is the big puzzle we're tackling today. We have this enormous, quiet consensus for climate action on one hand, but on the other, some of the loudest activists seem to be creating a serious backlash. So what is going on here? We're calling this the activism paradox. It's this really strange gap between this massive, underlying public desire for change and the polarizing effect of certain high-profile, in-your-face protest methods.
And a big piece of this puzzle is something called pluralistic ignorance. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. We're all collectively misreading the room. For instance, get this. A solid 69% of people say they're willing to put 1% of their own income toward fighting climate change. But politicians, they think that number is way down around 40%. We are all, it turns out, underestimating just how much we all want to act.
Now, let's be absolutely clear about something. Activism is essential. It's been incredibly successful at forcing climate onto the political agenda. It boosts votes for green parties in places like Germany, and it gets politicians talking. The problem here isn't activism itself. Not at all. The problem is when certain tactics run headfirst into some basic, hardwired parts of human psychology.
And that brings us to why helping can sometimes hurt. This isn't really about the climate cause itself. It's about these predictable psychological traps that can make even the best of intentions backfire spectacularly.
So the first big idea we need to get our heads around is called psychological reactance. This is that automatic, gut-level, don't tell me what to do response you feel when you think someone's trying to force your hand. Imagine getting lectured about driving your car to work when you literally have no other option. That feeling of annoyance? That's reactance. And it makes us want to do the exact opposite of what we're being told.
Fear is another one of these double-edged swords. The research is really clear on this. Fear is only a good motivator when you pair it with a sense of agency, a clear, achievable action people can take. If you just scream that the sky is falling, people feel helpless. They shut down. But if you pair that urgent warning with a credible solution, suddenly that paralysis can turn into real motivation.
And this illustrates that idea perfectly. Think of it as a climate anxiety curve. A little bit of anxiety, a moderate amount, can be a really powerful catalyst. It gets us moving. But too much, that constant stream of doom and gloom, it actually pushes people right over a tipping point into burnout, a feeling that nothing matters, and just total disengagement.
Okay, so we've got the psychology down. Now let's look at how this stuff actually plays out in the real world. Let's dissect the anatomy of a backlash.
The perfect case study here is the Yellow Vests movement in France. It was all sparked by a new carbon fuel tax. But this tax disproportionately hurt people in rural areas and low-income workers who absolutely had to drive their cars. Now here's the crucial point. These protesters weren't anti-climate. They were anti-injustice. In fact, they demanded even stronger climate action, but they wanted it targeted at the real polluters. Things like taxes on international shipping and air travel, not on working people.
And believe me, France wasn't a one-off. We see this exact same pattern play out all over the world. Australia's national carbon price? Gone in just 2 years. Canada's federal carbon price? It's under constant political attack. The lesson here is crystal clear. When a climate policy feels unfair, it becomes the perfect fuel for populist resistance.
So, with all that in mind, what actually works? How do you advocate for the climate without accidentally creating more opposition? Let's talk about a smarter playbook.
The research points to 4 key principles for smarter activism. First, and this is the big one, prioritize fairness. Go after luxury emissions, private jets, super yachts, not the daily commute of a nurse. Second, always pair urgency with agency. It's okay to sound the alarm, but immediately follow it up with clear, meaningful actions people can take. Third, punch up, not down. Target the powerful systems and polluters, not ordinary people just trying to get through the week. And finally, the goal is to activate the silent majority. The idea isn't to shock them, but to make their existing support visible and politically impossible to ignore. Look, if you take just one single thing away from this explainer, let it be this. If your tactic hurts people who are already squeezed, you're probably helping the political forces that want to slow climate action. It really is that simple.
So this is where we're left. The support for bold climate action is already out there. It is widespread, and it runs deep. The real challenge, it turns out, isn't about creating more support. It's about activating the enormous amount of support we already have. So the real question for all of us is, how do we make that silent majority's voice finally louder than the backlash against a vocal few?